My fellow Americans, it's Eric Erickson here. This Open Line Friday, I am delighted to have you with me. The phone number is 877-973-7425. If you text the word Eric to 33777, you get the live stream, the podcast, the show notes, so much more. Glad to have you with me. We must begin with Donald Trump and the pro-life movement now this hour. Spare me the hate mail. I've got advice. I got to set the stage for you. You got to understand what you're dealing with. And I don't. One of the things I've noticed is that over time, people on the left and the right, as they become more insular, they understand people outside their bubble less and less, which is unfortunate. I want to talk about my people in the pro-life movement, and they're my people. I have never, and I will never vote for a candidate who supports abortion rights. Donald Trump came very close to sounding like he does this week, yesterday. And if he loses in November, yesterday, August 29th, in the year of our Lord, 2024, will be the day he lost if he doesn't do some damage control pretty quickly. There are, in every coalition in politics, single-issue voters. That is, voters who one issue reigns supreme, and if you're not right on that issue, they won't vote for you. It doesn't matter about all the other issues. It doesn't matter about your issue. You can yell at them all you want that the other side is worse, but they don't care. They care about this issue. And if on this issue they think both sides are as bad, they're not going to go vote. For some of you, it's the Second Amendment. I know people who refuse to vote for Donald Trump because Donald Trump decided to ban bump stocks after the shooting in Las Vegas. The Supreme Court threw that out. But it was a gun control measure. They're opposed to gun control. They think Donald Trump enacted gun control, and they won't vote for him. Will not vote for him. Most Second Amendment voters are actually a little more willing to give wiggle room on the Second Amendment and things like that than pro-lifers are on abortion. There are all sorts of doomsday scenario for pro-lifers on how much worse Kamala Harris is going to be. But they've been told that about Bill Clinton. They've been told that about Barack Obama. They've been told that about Joe Biden. And the only people who've ever stabbed them in the back are Republicans. George H.W. Bush gave them Clarence Thomas, but also David Souter, who they were told was one of them, and he got on the court and became the most reliable liberal vote on the court. In 2000, evangelicals sat it out, refused to vote for George W. Bush. George W. Bush realized he had to do something to get their votes. He altered and expedited and cheapened adoption programs, made them cheaper, got rid of the overwhelming marriage penalty in the tax code, established PEPFAR, which was faith-based, did a lot of things and got their vote. In 2004, all those evangelicals came out, supported George W. Bush. And do you know what George W. Bush did to reward them? Nominated Harriet Miers to the United States Supreme Court. They gave him their vote in 2004, and he stabbed them in the back with Harriet Miers. Had to walk it back. They fought him, and they won. Donald Trump gave them Amy Coney Barrett, Neil Gorsuch, and Brett Kavanaugh, the United States Supreme Court. In 2016, see, all of you want to rewrite history. It wasn't just Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump in 2016. It was also Antonin Scalia's open seat on the United States Supreme Court, thanks not to Donald Trump, but to Mitch McConnell. And pro-lifers might not have liked a lot about Donald Trump, but they knew if we give him our vote, we'll get to fill Antonin Scalia's seat, not Hillary Clinton. And they got Neil Gorsuch, who promptly handed Oklahoma over to the Indians, but also voted to get rid of Roe v. Wade. And Brett Kavanaugh, who voted to get rid of Roe v. Wade. And Amy Coney Barrett, who voted to get rid of Roe v. Wade. Despite all their faults, despite all your complaints about them on various issues, including the Indian issue with Oklahoma, including Amy Coney Barrett and the immunity issue, including Brett Kavanaugh and several issues with his decisions, they did what they were meant to do, which was get rid of Roe v. Wade. It was a transactional relationship with Donald Trump, and that transaction concluded the moment Roe ended. And for pro-lifers who thought maybe there was still a relationship to have, Donald Trump has been setting that relationship on fire ever since. Yesterday, I mentioned Amendment 4 in Florida. Amendment 3 is a pro-marijuana amendment in the state of Florida on the ballot that would essentially prohibit and make very legal recreational marijuana and prohibit any enforcement. So anybody wants to drive down the road smoking weed, Amendment 3 would let them. Amendment 4 is a George Soros-funded amendment related to abortion that would allow abortion on demand without regulation until the moment the child had completely, last toe, exited the birth canal. If half of the child's foot is still in the birth canal, the doctor can feel free to crack open the kid's skull and pull out its brains and kill it. That's what happens with those late-term abortions. That would be a late-term abortion, and that would be the procedure. If the child was completely exited the birth canal minus the foot, abortion would still be legal under Amendment 4. Yesterday in Florida, Donald Trump was asked about Amendment 4 and how he was going to vote. And this is what he said.
You overturned Roe, and you want abortion to be a states' rights issue. In Florida, the state that you are a resident of, there's an abortion-related amendment on the ballot to overturn the 6-week ban in Florida. How are you going to vote on that?
Well, I think the 6 week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
So you'll vote in favor of the amendment?
I am going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. Look, just so you understand.
Just so you understand, you'll be voting that there are more 6 weeks. You've got two options in Florida. You either vote for or against an amendment that allows abortion until the moment the child has completely exited the birth canal. Sounds like, to pro-lifers, Donald Trump is saying, I'm going to vote for that because I don't like 6-week fetal heartbeat bans, which, while he was in office, wasn't opposed to. Now that he's out of office, he says, I think 6 weeks to kill a kid is not enough time to be able to murder children. I think that we should have more time to crack open skulls and suck out brains than just 6 weeks. That's Donald Trump. You heard him in his own words. And to pro-lifers who last week were told when J.D. Vance on Sunday said that Donald Trump would veto any national abortion legislation, pro-lifers were told, hey, doesn't matter. Nothing's ever going to pass at the national level. It's a state level issue now. We need to fight in the states and we need to win in the states. And so here comes Donald Trump on a state level, says, well, actually, I think 6 weeks isn't enough time to kill kids. We need more time to kill kids. And that's how I'm going to vote. This may not be your issue, but the pro-life stance is an issue for a significant portion of the Republican base. And if Donald Trump does not come out and clearly say he is opposed to Amendment 4, you may see enough people to stay home that it costs him the election. But it's not just that. It's not just that. He also said this.
I'm announcing today in a major statement that under the Trump administration, your government will pay for, or your insurance company will be mandated to pay for, all costs associated with IVF treatment, fertilization for women, IVF treatment.
Now, I part ways with a lot of my Christian friends on IVF. I have friends who would not have been able to have kids but for IVF. But if insurance companies around the nation are mandated to have to pay for IVF on all insurance policies, one, there are a number of churches, including the Catholic churches in America, who are opposed to IVF on moral grounds because they believe that life begins at conception, that creates a soul, and IVF is therefore creating lots of children, many of whom will be discarded and killed. Many souls lost. It's a moral and philosophical issue. You can disagree with it, but at least understand it. And there are many churches in this country that would vehemently oppose a mandate on their insurance policy to pay for IVF. It's also a massive expansion of government power. As a fiscal conservative, you should be horrified. And listen, if it passes, your insurance rates are going to skyrocket because of how expensive it is. Between both of those issues yesterday, Donald Trump lost the November election unless he does some damage control, I'm pretty sure. I can tell you the amount of conversations on social media have been disproportionate about Kamala Harris. The amount of private conversations have been disproportionate about what Donald Trump did yesterday. And I'll tell you exactly what these people are saying to each other because I've had probably 24 of these conversations since last night with people who are all calling me, and they're essentially saying, you know what? We're going to win Montana in the Senate. We've got West Virginia because of Joe Manchin. That gives us 51 seats. We have 6-3 Supreme Court. Why do we need Trump anymore? Kamala Harris can't get the filibuster killed. She can't pack the court because we're going to win the Senate. She can't do anything except for regulatory things that can be undone by a Congress or blocked by a Congress. And if she wins, in 2 years, the party that doesn't control the White House tends to do better. We'll have purged Trump, so we won't be burdened by Trump candidates. They'll be disaffected and stay home. We'll be able to grow our numbers and bring back a conservative Republican Party. Why not? You may think that's foolish thinking, and to be clear, I do think that's foolish thinking, in part. I would rather win the White House for the reasons I articulated the other day. But these are the conversations that are happening, and you should know these conversations are happening with a lot of people in the pro-life movement who feel thoroughly betrayed. You see, Donald Trump is not growing the tent. This is not about the big tent. This is about picking up the big tent and moving it from covering a number of members of the party faithful and putting it now around people who have never been part of the party and probably don't want to be in the party. Donald Trump is going to lose more votes than he gains by allying the party with the pro-abortion supporters of Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. It's live at the Improv. It is campaign planning by the spur of the moment from the seat of his pants on a stage with no thought in it, trying to do something based on some polling he's seen, and it's going to get him killed. If you want Donald Trump to win in November, you need to understand something. Pro-lifers have been betrayed so often by Republicans. Your bullying to them that Kamala Harris is worse is not going to persuade them. What will persuade them is Donald Trump coming out before the weekend is over and saying, I am opposing Amendment 4 in Florida because I do not believe that we should have abortion on demand until the moment the child exits the womb completely. If he does that, he's going to turn this around. If he does not do it before Sunday morning, when pro-lifers are in church talking to each other, he could cost himself this election. Greetings, conversationalists. It's Eric Erickson here. The phone number, 877-973-7425. We have to get back to the Kamala Harris defense of Bidenomics when we come back. It's kind of a lengthy clip I gotta play. But first, I want to go to some phone calls here. Let's go first to Jim. You're up next. Welcome.
Hey, Eric. Great show. Just caught you in Tulsa. I'm gonna push back just a little bit.
Please do.
Supposed to judge a person by their actions, right? So He's the most pro-life president when he was president. What he's saying now, he's talking out both sides of his mouth. Please, let's continue to push him as our candidate. I'm a big pro-life guy. Eric, come on, man. Look at what he's done.
Hang on. And for those of you also on hold to Jim's point here, Y'all, I'm trying to explain to you, I know these people and the conversations they're having. I'm not endorsing the position. I explained to people the other day why I think these people should vote for Trump. But you need to understand what the conversations are having. And I can tell you that since he spoke yesterday, my cell phone has lit up with people. My private and direct messages are lit up with people who are furious about it. You may not like single issue voters. You may think they're ridiculous. But there are single-issue gun voters in this country. There are single-issue abortion voters in this country, the majority of whom on both of those issues vote Republican. There are single-issue abortion voters who vote Democrat. There are single-issue environmental voters who vote Democrat. There are a variety of single-issue voters. You may not like them. You may think they're foolish. But you need to, one, understand they exist, and two, understand that you bullying them and telling them it doesn't matter, she's worse, isn't going to persuade them. But you can mitigate the damage. Smart campaigns know how to put distance between themselves and single-issue voters without losing those voters. But when you tell them this is now a state issue, you won with Roe v. Wade, thank me, one, that means the transactional relationship is over. They got what they wanted from you. Roe v. Wade is gone. And if you want to get and hold them, you need to not tell them, well, this is a state issue, and then come out and say, well, and at the state level, I think a 6-week fetal heartbeat ban is a bad idea. We need more weeks to kill kids. That's a terrible way to keep these single-issue voters. And again, you may not like them, you may disagree with them, but don't deny that they're a block of voters who matter. All right. We'll take more of your phone calls. People want to challenge me on this. I'm happy to be challenged and talk it out. But first, I got to tell you about Swiss America. Banks are collapsing. There are interest rates that still haven't come down. There are now questions about whether they're coming down in September or December. Swiss America has been the trustless leader in precious metals for 40 years, and they've been warning people about a secret war on cash. You can get their report, The Secret War on Cash. Read it. It only takes about 15 minutes to read. They're rated A+ by the Better Business Bureau. The Secret War on Cash report completely free by calling or texting 800-289-2646. 800-289-2646. The all-out war on cash includes digital forms of currency. It's spreading. Just text my name, Eric, to 800-289-2646. 800-289-2646, or go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric. SwissAmerica.com/ERICK, or 800-289-2646. Call them, give them my name, text them, give them my name, get the report for free. Message and data rates may apply. Your phone calls when we come back. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here, across the United States of America. Glad to have you with me. The phone number is 877-973-7425. I want to go to Eric's phone call here. Welcome to the show, Eric. How are you?
Hey, Eric. How you doing?
Good. What's going on?
Hey, I got this bone to pick with you, and I know you're a great guy. You're awesome. But every single time I hear you say something negative about Trump, it almost turns into a pro-Kamala campaign ad. And it's too deep into the presidential election season to be saying something negative about our guy. And I understand where you're coming from, and you're trying to protect him in some ways, but it's not helping because it gives people a bad look. And I don't want to get people to the point where they're like, well, the evangelicals aren't going to vote for him, so neither am I. I'm just going to stay home. It's a lost cause.
Well, so I think I got to tell people what's going on, and I'm not here to carry water for Donald Trump. So when he says something like he said, I think it needs to be pointed out and advice needs to be offered on how to fix it.
And I appreciate that, but wouldn't it be better just to pick up the phone and just talk to them personally instead of putting it on the air? But
that's not my job. I mean, my job's to do a radio show, and not to serve as a propagandist for. There are plenty of people willing to be a propagandist for him. That's not my job.
And I understand your radio show is great, but we want him to win. I mean, you got to admit, America's going to be better with him in office.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's, again, I appreciate the concern, but it's not my job to keep my mouth shut. It's actually my job to open my mouth and speak. And if Trump doesn't like it or y'all don't like it, I'm sorry, but my job is not to sit here and hump his leg. And to tell you everything is fine when it's not fine. I'm not going to lie to you because that would be lying. And I think I got to be truthful. And when Donald Trump, you need to understand, and Donald Trump needs to understand, that there is a significant portion of the Republican base. It's small, but it's significant because they vote and give money more than most, disproportionately. It's called the pro-life community. And when they hear Donald Trump say, don't worry about the national stuff, focus on the state level, and then on the state level says, and I think 6 weeks abortion ban isn't good, we need more time to kill kids, they're going to stop giving him money and stop voting. And it's not my job to call Donald Trump and say this. My job is to inform you guys about what's happening, and I can offer constructive advice on it. Here's how you fix it. Before these people get to church on Sunday, you better say, I'm voting against Amendment 4. If you're here for someone who's going to tell you it's all hunky-dory when it's not, I have never in 12 years done that. And I get copious amounts of hate from people who wish I would be a team player and tell you that Donald Trump is wonderful and we're going to win and don't you fret, everything's going to be fine. It would be a lie for me to do it, and I try my best not to lie. That's how I do my job. And I have weathered multiple elections with people mad at me. When Mitt Romney was running for president, I told people, look, this isn't good. He shouldn't be doing this. Here's what he needs to do. And people on the Romney team would listen and try to make adjustments. And people on the Trump team listen. But here's my personal philosophy. I should be saying nothing in private that I'm not willing to say to you guys publicly. I should not be willing to pick up a phone and say something that I'm not, because you guys, we're in conversation together. I'm not consulting for a political campaign. I'm talking with you guys. And if someone else hears this and they're discouraged by it, that's not my fault. Donald Trump shouldn't have said what he said. All right. Kimberly, you're going to be up next. Welcome. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
Great.
So everybody's been beating the same dead horse I wanted to beat, and I just
that's all. It is dead and still being kicked. You are more than welcome to kick it too.
So first, I want to say I'm from Florida, and I will definitely be voting no against Amendment 4.
Thank you.
And 3. And 3. But,
yes.
And I get what you're saying. I get where you're coming from. It just is still extremely frustrating to hear single issue voters, because I feel like that makes them really no better than the folks that we're trying to fight against, which don't care at the end of the day what we've been suffering through. And it's almost like the same. I feel like we're living in bizarro land. I mean, we have been under Vice President and President Biden for the last 3.5 years, and people are acting as if she's not in control and that her decisions aren't why we are where we are today. And they're acting as if President Trump, former President Trump, is the incumbent. And it just feels very bizarre that I think half of our own party doesn't realize that that's why we like him so much, is because he fights and he understands that we're not all going to agree on all issues, but we all do want to, we have more values in common than we don't. And he is not afraid. I mean, the Democrats, we all know, they could care less what the issue is. They vote in lockstep, and that's why they always have their foot on our throat, and they always win. We have to have a killer instinct, or we're never going to survive. So I get that people want to have one issue, but that's like saying it's your kids, and your kids say, you know what, I don't agree with everything my mom and dad do, so I'm going to, try to separate from them. Or a husband and wife. I mean, I've been married 31 years, raised 2 children. And of course, I didn't agree with everything my husband has to say. We have different parenting. We have different philosophies on things, but I certainly didn't seek a divorce. I mean, I know that we agree on more than we disagree on, and our values are more alike than they're disalike. So it just frustrates me, because I feel like that's them saying, we're not getting everything we want, like a petulant child, and we're just willing to sacrifice the rest of the country and give it up to socialism and Marxism. It's very frustrating.
So normally this is where I would press the button and let you go, but I want you to be on the phone while I say this.
Okay.
Amen to everything Kimberly just said. I get a lot of hate, and I see the emails flowing that somehow people are confusing my explaining single issue voters to you as me being the single issue voter.
No.
No. And I know you don't, Kimberly. I see these people float in because I'm trying to explain to people what Kimberly just said is right. And it's a deep frustration of mine. And like, for example, here where I am in Georgia, we have libertarians who have ballot access, and they oftentimes force Republicans into runoffs, and they're not willing to compromise on that one issue. They're pure, and they don't care that the Democrats are worse because on their issue, the Republicans are just as bad. So screw them all, forget all the other issues. And it deeply frustrates me. And so your frustration that you're expressing, I get. And yes, I do think that Donald Trump would actually give us better judges. He would pardon the people who prayed in front of abortion clinics, which should matter. But also, I have run political campaigns since I was in college. And every campaign everywhere has to deal with these single-issue voters. And they can be some of the most frustrating voters to deal with. And I share your frustration, and I've said so many times the things you've said. But also, whether you or I like it, Kimberly, the reality is that they exist and they don't care.
Right.
And so to some degree, you and I feel held hostage by them. But a good campaign finds a way to find distance without burning bridges with them. And so what I would recommend, and what I've done on the show in saying this, is I think the Trump campaign should come out and say, one, he's opposed to Amendment 4, but he believes that this is a states' rights issue. Nothing's ever going to pass at the federal level anyway, so you should continue to fight in the states. And by the way, he's going to pardon the people who are in jail for praying at abortion clinics, and Kamala Harris isn't. So do you really want to go vote for her? If he does those things, I think the issue goes away. If he doesn't do those things, my concern is that these people are going to go to church on Sunday, and they're going to start talking to each other, and they're going to begin to start talking each other out. And then they're going to have Monday, which is a holiday. So they're not going to encounter you and me. They're just going to have this conversation mulling their head. And by next week, we're going to see a polling shift because pro-lifers just said, he's not one of us anymore. I'm not going to vote for it. That's my concern, which is why I'm raising it. So I wanted to leave you on here just so you could hear that and everyone else could hear that what Kimberly's saying, I agree with. Don't shoot me for explaining, though, pro-lifers. So have a great weekend. Thank you very much. It's great to hear from you. David, you're going to be the last caller on this issue that I'm going to take. Welcome.
Hey, Eric, how are you?
Good.
All right, question. So, again, beating a dead horse. It's pretty dead, but one more whack at it. So are you saying that those voters are not going to vote or going to vote vote for Harris? Because if they do that, that's like cutting off your nose.
No. These people will leave it blank. And maybe that's okay for Trump. But, and forgive me, David, I got to repeat this story, though, because it's so relevant here, and it's come up now in multiple conversations. So in the year 2000, the Bush campaign poured a ton of effort into getting evangelicals to vote for him. And at the end of the day, they concluded that he was going to suitor them just like his dad, and they didn't vote for him. They didn't go vote for Al Gore. They left it blank. In fact, the Bush campaign ran the numbers nationwide, and they would have won significantly nationwide with a majority popular vote had evangelicals actually voted in the presidential line. These are people who showed up to vote, and they voted for governor, they voted for senator, they voted for congressman, and they left the presidential line blank. So what Bush did is over the next 4 years, he developed a bunch of programs that evangelicals liked. He lowered the cost of adoption. He gave greater tax incentives for adoption. He got rid of the marriage penalty in the tax code. He pushed for referenda on the country to prohibit gay marriage. He did PEPFAR, which was essentially a faith-based approach to solving AIDS in Africa that at the time was pretty tremendously supported by evangelicals. And the result was in 2004, they overwhelmingly showed up and voted for him. And the way pro-lifers have interpreted that since then is that sometimes it's better in the matter of stewardship to leave the field fallow and sow greater rewards later. And what that means for those of you who don't speak evangelical is sometimes by not voting, you show how much clout you have, so you get a lot of things in the next election. And if these people start talking to themselves that way by this weekend when they're in church together and reminding themselves Donald Trump's going to have problems so that's why I'm just saying on this radio program for everyone to see and hear, he has got to do some damage control before these people get in church on Sunday. Because once that conversation starts happening on Sunday, it's going to be hard to shut it down. Whether you like it or not, Donald Trump suggested that a 6-week fetal heartbeat ban, which is the law of the land in Georgia and in Arkansas and in Oklahoma and in Florida and in other places, and it was hard fought for by the conservative Republican base, that he thinks that's too restrictive and we need more time to kill kids. We have single-issue voters, whether you like them or not, whether they annoy you or not, and oftentimes, believe me, they annoy me too. All I can tell you is that they are a thing that must be dealt with. And the problem, as I've said, in fact, I was talking to a New York Times reporter right before the show who was asking me about this issue. I said, this is the ultimate problem. The Trump campaign in February said that Joe Biden wasn't going to be the nominee. It was going to be Kamala Harris. And turns out they were right. And they act like they don't have a plan to deal with it. So what we're seeing is live at the Improv. And it is Donald Trump saying things without foreknowledge or forbearance or warning that you shouldn't go down this path. Avoid these categorical statements. And his live at the Improv approach is going to hurt him. There is a way for him to fix this, but it must be fixed fast. That is to come out and say he's voting against Amendment 4. Tony Dungy. You all know who Tony Dungy is? Tony Dungy was the wonderful, wonderful coach of the Indianapolis Colts for a very long time. Tony Dungy is a conservative evangelical Christian who loves the Lord and likes Donald Trump. And he put up the video of Donald Trump giving his statement that, quote, I'm going to vote that we need more than 6 weeks. And this is what Tony Dungy wrote. Florida's Amendment 4 is written with vague and deceptive terms. All Florida voters need to read it very carefully. I predict when Donald Trump reads and understands what the bill will actually do, he'll change course and vote no. But I urge all Florida voters to research this. Don't be fooled by terms like viability, healthcare providers, and parental notification that are not defined. The bill will drastically change the abortion landscape in Florida if passed. You got Tony Dungy, forget me. You got Tony Dungy telling Trump, think again and come out against Amendment 4. If Trump does that, this issue goes away. If he doesn't, it's going to fester. I know these voters. These are my people, y'all. I know them. Trump needs to do damage control. Now, I got to tell you about the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. Can't clean up this mess, but it can clean up the stinky odors. What you do is you go to EdenPureDeals.com and you put in ERIC3, ERICK3, ERICK3. And in the process, you get 3 Eden Pure Thunderstorms. You save $200. You get them for less than $200. You get them from EdenPureDeals.com, discount code ERIC3, and they wipe out odors. The Eden Pure Thunderstorm is small. You can hold it in your hand. It's about the size of a book. You can plug it into the wall. You can plug it in with a USB cord. I keep one in my travel bag. And if I'm in a hotel room or have a rental car where someone smoked, I can plug it in with a USB cord or I can plug it into the wall. I've powered it off my laptop one time. And it just wipes out the odors. It generates ozone. Ozone latches onto ions. Ions are what causes odors, odor ions. And ozone is attracted to them. And so it finds them and locks on them like a magnet and destroys them. And it gets rid of odors. So wherever an odor is, it's an ion. Wherever an ion is, the ozone can go and it wipes them out. So you can't hide from the ozone. You can't hide from the odor killers. So you go to EdenPureDeals.com and you put in ERIC3, ERICK3, and you get 3 Eden Pure Thunderstorms and you save $200. I do have to say that we have reached this point. I was having this conversation last night with some friends of mine that we have reached the point in the campaign cycle where I start getting the emails from people that you're not telling me what I want to hear. I cannot listen to you anymore. And it happens every single election cycle. And at this point, I've actually started finding it very funny. Here's the latest subject line. Terrible show today. Can't listen to you anymore. You're either aboard the Trump train or you're not because the alternative is so dangerous. I don't care about abortion. If you've actually listened with an inquisitive mind, all I've done is tried to explain to you the dynamic. Part of the problem is in explaining the dynamic, some people think you're affirming the decision of those people who would sit it out, which I'm not doing, but you got to know these people. Y'all, you do understand this, right? You have to understand what you're dealing with. It's like you got to be able to understand the other side's argument to be able to persuade them they're wrong. You need to be able to understand the minds of these single-issue voters so that you can persuade them that though they're a single-issue voter, actually their issue is best helped by showing up and voting as opposed to talking themselves out of voting. It's very funny, the reactions to people when you do these things. When I do these things in particular, that I can't listen to you anymore. You're talking about this thing that it's essentially scares me. I don't want to contemplate it, but you can't deal with it unless you confront it. And you got to confront single issue voters. I remember I ran a campaign one time and there was a single issue vote, and it was a local issue, and there were people who were single issue voters on a trash collection. Here was the problem. Their local city dump was not lined, meaning that anything that happened flowed into the water system. But there were people who didn't want a new landfill, and it was a landmine issue. I'll have to tell you on the other side of the break how we solved the issue. It was so bad. I feel dirty to this day. But nonetheless, first, I need to tell you about Omaha Steaks, because right now you're probably not going to be able to get them for Labor Day, but you can still take advantage of the 50% off sale for your fall grilling as the weather cools down. Go to omahasteaks.com, put in Eric, E-R-I-C-K. You get $20 off. omahasteaks.com, $20 off. All you have to do, my friends, is go to Omaha Steaks. And don't forget, they have a 100% satisfaction guarantee. They want you to be happy. If you get something and you're not happy, call them, and they're going to take care of you because they want you to have a lifetime relationship with them. I've been ordering from Omaha Steaks since I was in college, a long time ago. All you do, go to omahasteaks.com. You take advantage of the 50% off sale. Everything site-wide, 50% off or more. Load up your cart with deliciousness. It'll be delivered to your door. At checkout, you'll see a promo code box, and you put in Eric, E-R-I-C-K. You get $20 off, minimum order required, at omahasteaks.com. You get their 100% satisfaction guarantee. You get incredible, incredible savings. omahasteaks.com. Yeah, we campaigned on both sides of that issue, people. We did. I'll tell you about it on the other side.